Jim, welcome to People in Legal.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Yeah, it's great. I'm a massive fan from afar. I've actually followed over many years all the different sort of business models you've got and some great press. And I guess glad to be talking to you today about the venture you started, I guess, last year and sort of just checking in on how that's all going, which is Jim's Legal.
Yeah, well, it's good. It's an exciting venture for us, actually. I've had a lot of experience with lawyers over the years, as you can imagine. I mean, we're very successful at staying out of court. I've only been to court twice in the whole 35-year history of Jim's Group. And in both those
Wow.
cases, it was settled at mediation for what I offered in the first place. So we're good at staying out of court, but I've got a lot of experience with different lawyers on our side, on the other side, and some of them are a lot better than others, put it that way.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I guess it's a good insight having as a customer, as a consumer of the
Mm.
services. I guess it's a important perspective to have. Jim, I'd like to actually, I guess, start with a bit of an introduction. I guess, and understanding your journey for our listeners, and yeah, how did you get to where you got today?
From basically from mowing lawns as as an impoverished student. Yes. Well, yeah, that was it. I was a student doing a undergraduate degree and then a PhD in history, and I found that having any other kind of job just wasn't as good as mowing lawns and looking after gardens. I enjoyed it. It's outdoors. I made quite good money. I even managed to buy a house when I was a student, so it was good. Intended to be an academic. It was a short-term thing. And then when I finished my PhD, I had no prospects of an academic job whatsoever. So I basically turned my part-time mowing gardening business into a full-time career. And then I started employing subcontractors, building up and selling lawn mowing rounds. And eventually in 1989, I franchised it. And at that time, somebody asked me how many franchisees I might have one day. And I said, if it goes well, maybe as many as 100. So we've now just cracked 5,500. So it's done a bit better than that.
It's incredible, absolutely incredible. And I guess you've got all the different sort of different areas and lines of business as well. So you've got the lawn mowing line, or the gardening line. You've got all sorts of lines. I think I saw you've got a beauty business as well. It's one of the ones you've got there, and you've got
Well, the
of
beauty
course
one's
legal.
embarrassment. That actually failed. We gave a few
Oh,
franchises out way in the beginning. We just couldn't find enough local work for them. So we basically mostly transferred them to other divisions like cleaning, which do work well.
yeah. Well, I've been a customer of Jim's Cleaning myself. So I mean, and Jim's Mowing as well. So I've been a customer
Right.
past, and great work.
Good man. You
Yep.
have sound judgment in whom you employ to do your services.
Fantastic. So why Jim's Legal?
As I said, because it's a business where I've seen extremes. Some of the best people I know lawyers have a bit of a bad name sometimes, but some of the best and most ethical people that I know have been lawyers. My family court lawyer many years back was I had terrible problems with the family court with my ex-wife. She was the most kind, most decent, most caring person you could possibly imagine. She would be lie awake at night worrying about my case because it was really hard. And I've come across many others like Harpreet Hay. I used to work for him many years. Incredibly ethical, decent, caring people. And I have seen the most utter scumbags you could possibly imagine in the legal profession. I'll give you one example. And there was a case where a franchisee was making a claim to have a refund of a franchise payment. Now, they had a very good case. I actually wrote to them, and right at the beginning, I said, I will support you fully in this. They
Mhm.
said, no, we're going to go for it. Lawyers have told us to go for it. So they went for it. And they launched a legal case, and they included myself and they included the franchisor concerned. And eventually, after all the back and forth and everything else, it was settled at mediation. Now, the claim was $35,000. They actually got 40 because we kicked an extra $5,000 just to sweeten the deal.
Mm.
But I discovered one thing that absolutely horrified me. Their legal bills were $100,000.
Oh, goodness.
So some lawyer had charged them $100,000 to chase a $35,000 payment. And this was after the national franchisor clearly said, we will help you with this. It
Mm.
was just unbelievable. And
That's
there are other
incredible.
cases similar. There are some lawyers who are just so mercenary and money grubbing, they will go for money and they have no interest in their client's welfare. decent, good lawyers will always go for the best deal regardless. It's like my dentist. I go to see
Mm,
my dentist. She's a lovely lady called Sarah. She's just beautiful. And she's
mm,
made a fortune out of doing deep remote root canal surgery. All right.
mm,
She charges me a lot of money for this. But then she's been giving me advice on how to clean and floss my teeth better. And I have had no root surgery for years. So this
mm,
lady is doing everything she can to reduce her business. Now, to me, that is the proper way a profession should work. You go for the interest of the client first and foremost. And you say, how can I give you the best possible service? And then you don't worry about how much money I can make.
mm. Yeah, no, I totally agree. So it's first, I mean, the lawyers I've always enjoyed working with have been ones where they understand the commercial consequences. I mean, they don't go there and sort of, it's not about the timesheet and what's actually sitting on the timesheet. It's more about the outcome for the client. And I've been lucky to have some great lawyers that I've worked with, I guess, in the past and engaged now. But it's interesting actually because I think it is about the client first. It is actually one of those professions where I think having a commercial focused lawyer who understands client needs is very important.
Mm. Yeah, you've got to have somebody who's good at what they do. They've got to be competent, they've got to be professional, they've got to be efficient, but they've also got to be ethical. And what we intend to provide with Jim's Legal is all of that. And it's actually a benefit for us. The brand itself has an enormous impact. We're up there with McDonald's. We've got something like 98% public awareness. People
Mm,
trust us, and for good reason, because when you've had your lawns mowed and your house cleaned and your pest control and your IT and
mm,
everything else done by us, you get the feeling, hey, this is a company that really believes in what they do. Because
mm,
usually, not always, usually the service is good, consistent. If there's any issues, we take it up. So, for example, if a client has a problem with customer service, they'll put a complaint through the system. If they don't get a proper response and they contact us again, I personally, as the CEO of the company, will get involved in making sure they're looked after. That
mm.
level of care for customers is something that we've got to have right throughout the organization. But people know this, they trust us.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. And I guess who's your typical customer? So what sort of customer would you say is typical customer for Jim's Legal?
At the moment, a variety of things like wills and a bit of debt and just small issues, small commercial issues, those kinds of things. What I'd love to get into, the one thing that really would get me going, if we can get in that area, is representing franchisees against franchisors. Because I can tell you
Okay.
there are some franchisors out there who are incredibly brutal and dreadful in what they do. They really
Mm,
screw franchisees into the ground. And I think someone
mm,
who could represent franchisees, possibly on a success basis,
mm.
because we can afford to do that. That will be a tremendous service to offer because it really upsets me. We really try hard to look after our franchisees, and we know so often it doesn't happen.
Well, you've got the background as well. You know it works, and you've seen what's successful. You know it works. You know how the model works itself. And I think actually niching into area, like having a niche area in the legal professions is a great thing. It's a great area because you understand the industry, you understand the business model,
Yeah.
and you understand the sorts of people you're dealing with.
Well, this will be a great area for us because we understand it very well. We understand
Mm,
franchise contracts. We know the detail. We're experts in that area. So it is obvious. We understand about service too. We understand the franchising code, which is very, very complex these days. You've got these massive
mm,
disclosure documents and so forth. So we know we're right on top of that. So we've got a major advantage.
mm. And how's the expansion of the business been going? How's the expansion of Jim's Legal been going? I mean, has it been something that's been growing pretty quickly? How's it been doing?
I'd say it's going steadily. We're not turning over a huge amount of money. Our lawyers involved in things like internal and stuff too. Um,
Mm,
so we're turning over about, I think last month's about 12,000 a month. So it's been just steadily rising with time.
hmm.
With the other side of it too is we're big into conveyancing. That's another area which we're expanding
Okay,
quite rapidly in, but that's kind of
interesting.
separate. But conveyancing is also a good area for us because again, it depends on reputation. If you're buying a house, you really want
Mm.
to be able to trust the person organizing it for you because if they make a mistake, you are in really big trouble.
I think it's a challenge, isn't it? One of the things that I've found as a consumer of legal services is actually finding a good lawyer. So you're actually in a position where you've never had to use a lawyer before. How do you find a lawyer? And actually, I guess because you've dealt with a whole bunch of other services for their clients, you've actually, they're actually close to them. I guess having a trusted brand you can go to and access those services is actually something that's pretty useful.
Yeah.
And knowing that you provide those services.
That's right. If you're a professional, you've been using lawyers for years, you know who's good and who's bad because you've tried them in the past. You tried this guy, not so good, this one over here, very good. This one good in this area. So you know that stuff. The typical consumer doesn't know that. Most people who get involved in legal disputes, it's their first dispute. How do you choose? We find that within gyms, our best success is with areas where there's a lot of fear from clients. Now, I'll give you an example. Okay, we do pretty well at things like cleaning and mowing, but the fact of the matter is, somebody comes in and cleans your house badly, you get somebody else to do it better next time, won't you?
Yeah.
But what if
Yep.
you build a fence? When you build a
Yeah.
fence, somebody puts up a fence, it looks beautiful. It really looks
Mm.
good. You can't tell. You're not an expert.
Mm.
And
Mm.
then 2 years later, there's a strong wind and the fence blows down because the
Mm.
posts weren't inserted correctly or the nails weren't deep enough. There's all kinds of reasons why a fence can blow down. Now, that very rarely happens with us because we train people well, but in the odd situation that it does, we are there and we fix it. Now, as a result of that, we actually are flooded with work. The biggest problem with fencing is we've got about double the leads we can possibly handle because the demand is so high. But to me, legal is a similar area. It's an area where there's a lot of fear. You choose the wrong, like this poor guy who took that case. He wanted a lawyer to chase the case, trusted the lawyer, didn't know any lawyers, never done it before, ended up being completely taken to the cleaners. And we're talking about somebody, actually, what made it even worse was the wife who was the franchisee. She died. It was the widow who was trying to chase things for his family.
Oh,
To have
goodness.
that happen is just awful. But they've never done it before. How do they know who to use?
Well, that's right. I mean, and you're right. I think that there is a fear, isn't there? I mean, you know, if I think about the professions and I think about accounting and legal, I mean, you're not afraid to go to your accountant. You go and have you generally speaking, you probably have a lot of legal discussions with your accountant, and they might refer you to a lawyer, but more often than not, they won't. So you're not afraid of it. But as soon as you think lawyer, you think, oh, it's going to cost me a lot of money. And who do I use, and what kind of discussion do I have? And I think as well, there's also knowing how to talk to a lawyer as well, actually having the mindset of what things you're going to cover, because I think there's a lot of unpacking of emotional things that can actually happen during discussions and things that don't necessarily get to an outcome. So being prepared to how to talk to a lawyer.
Yeah. People are very ignorant about how the law works. They sort of think that, you take a lawsuit and then you go and you fight that in court and then you get a decision from a judge. What they don't realize is that almost never happens these days. Only about 1 or 2% of lawsuits ever actually get decided at trial. Most of them are settled. So what you're going to understand is the process of how you handle a dispute. And a lot of it's to do with being cost effective. You've got to actually work out a way to keep your clients' costs down and reasonable. Pursue mediation, not be a walkover. Work out a reasonable sort of settlement, and then get your client to accept that. Now, they may want to go all the way and be vicious, and in a sense, you just got to talk them down. You got to explain to them, hey, look, if you do that, this is going to cost you a lot. This level of a court costs are going to be. This is how long it's going to take. This is how many years it's going to be. You're going to be in litigation with all the distraction. Here's a decent settlement. Let's work out how we can make an agreement. We had a case just last week. We had a person who was supposedly taking a $2.9 million claim against us. Okay, we settled it in 2.5 hours. We just worked out what the best solution was. I mean, it was thankfully too, one of the reasons that it worked so well, because this guy who is quite unreasonable himself had a decent lawyer, a lovely lady. And she actually could see the point, and she say, this will work. You don't have to do this. We can do this. It was a good solution. It really was.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think mediation is it's a very, very effective solution to getting outcome. I think, and the more that people do it, the more that I think also people don't necessarily know they've got that option to do. I think they're not educated towards that option. It's a bit like there's this long, they think, oh, we've got to go through a bunch of letters going backwards and forwards, and every one of those letters has got a cost against it. But basically, mediation is actually an effective way of resolving these things.
Yeah, you really don't want to fight legal disputes. The only people that win are the lawyers. No, they say it. But we want our clients to win. So we're not interested in making a whole lot of money at anybody's expense. And it's a certain conflict in a sense, but it just a matter of ethics. It is ironic, actually, that lawyers have probably the worst reputation of any profession. And yet some of the best people I've ever met are lawyers. You just got to have the right one.
I totally agree. I mean, there's some lovely people, and they actually, and you look at some of these sort of country or suburban lawyers, or people that sort of, big firms, small firms. You find good lawyers that actually put their heart into it, and I mean, they do a lot more than what they get paid for. I mean, it's interesting because I think there's a statistic that I saw that really, out of the billing day, that some lawyers are only billing about 2.5 to 3 hours in a whole day. That's actually that they're recovering from it. So there's a lot of work they're doing, which isn't necessarily making it to their pocket.
Yeah, no, that's right too. It's good. It's a great profession if it's done right. One of my sons actually is just launching his own practice as a lawyer. He,
Oh,
he he
wow.
specializes in wills and estates. Yeah, so I know he's a great guy. If you want something done, go to him for sure.
So, I mean, will you be actually, I guess, your model of working with Jim's Legal, are you actually going to be looking to get, I guess, operators to come under the Jim's name as franchisees and that sort of stuff? Or how's it going to work with the legal business you've got?
Not so much as franchisees, more associates. So we've got somebody starting off family law. So they
Okay.
just pay us more like a small percentage
Okay.
of their billing. So it's not like a franchise. It's just like a specialty because one law firm can't do everything. We
Yeah.
are particularly good in certain areas. If there's an area that we don't understand very well, we find somebody else who wants to. We lend our brand and facilities. We've got some nice offices, so we can help people to be successful. No, that's part of the plan.
It's actually really interesting because I came across a firm in the UK called Keystone, and they actually they've got a model which is really interesting. They bring the lawyers in, they do all this sort of administration, they do the marketing, they've got the big brand which is across it all, but they're actually listed. I believe they're listed in the UK. But really interesting model, I guess, sort of akin to it might be akin to what you're actually looking at. We're having those sort of special areas. They bring the expertise, they bring clients, and what happens is that then you do all the other sort of stuff for them.
I think one of the key innovations with us though is it's like a practice, but we take a much smaller percentage. I think we're looking at taking like 20%, so
Okay.
very small. And it's very similar to the model we do of the general franchising system, even though these aren't franchisees. We
Mm.
have average franchise fees about 6% of turnover. Now, if you
Hmm.
have a look at most service franchises, they charge about 15%, like Johnny King, for example.
Goodness.
It's a commercial cleaning franchise. So
Mm.
we take very modest fees.
Mm.
Actually, we turn over close to $1 billion a year in revenue. Our net
Mm.
profit would be probably less than 1% of that. Very,
Goodness.
very, very small. So it's
Mm.
kind of like a generous system. That's one reason it's so big. And I think the same thing applies to legal. I think some people overcharge because they're in the position of having the brand and so forth. We'd like to see people make a lot of money out of this.
Mm. I mean, what do you think about what they call, I think, it's alternative fee arrangements or fixed billing, where they've got fixed fees and that kind of thing? I mean, is that something you think I mean, is that something you can see happening more in the industry? So where people are actually sort of they've got a fixed fee for a particular matter, and that's it. There's not using timesheets and that sort of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, I 100% believe in that. That's exactly how it should work. We want to do that with conveyancing, to put a single fee in regardless of the difficulties. People love fixed fees. If you're going to actually do a gardening job for somebody and you want to give them an hourly rate, that is a very dicey thing to do. First of all, because our hourly rates tend to be quite high. We tend to work on a minimum of $70 an hour. So it
Mm.
sounds a lot, but also the customer doesn't know what they're getting.
Mm.
So that they, they don't know how much it's going to cost. Okay, it's so much per hour, but how many hours is it going to be? I don't know. Whereas if you go and give a quote to job, you say, okay, we're going to clean up your whole yard, we're going to cut the grass down, we're going to dig the garden beds, it's going to cost you X. You know
Mm.
exactly what you're down for. Now that's very clear too. If the job isn't done right, we can see that and we will fix it. We
Mm.
have the obligation to fix it. But if they say, well, I expected more to be done, what do you say? You charge per hour. My daughter and her partner has just started Jim's removals on the same sort of basis. And they're
Good.
they're great entrepreneurs. They're going to run it across the country. I've got great confidence in them. But one of the things they're going to be doing is trying to put fixed quotes on removals, so people know exactly what they're going to get charged to move. Now, to me, that's a
Mm.
lot better than so much per hour, which is normal in the industry.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm just thinking, my mind's racing as you're talking, Jim, about things like mediations. I mean, if you've got a fixed price for a mediation, if you've got a couple of parties in a room and you're trying to figure out a commercial dispute, or other some sort of dispute, and you've got a fixed price for a mediation, that'd be amazing. Like you know
Yeah,
what you're up for
clients
versus
clients
everything else.
love fixed prices. They know people are scared of loss. They're scared of the uncertainty. It's actually better. You can charge even a bit more with a fixed
Mm,
price on average.
mm,
You'll win
mm,
some, you lose some, but that's the general principle. If you can even charge a little bit more than you would for an hourly rate based on your estimate of how long it's going to take, but the client knows what they're up for. And that makes a lot of difference too, because, okay, let's just say you have a business that's going to cost you an estimated $20,000. All right. Now, if
mm,
it comes to $15,000, that's, that's good. But what if it comes
mm,
to $50,000? Suddenly you've got
mm,
really big problems because most people don't have that kind of money. So a fixed price, even if the average might be 15, if you offer them for 20, if you
mm.
understand the distinction, then people know what they're getting and you don't have the negative. People don't like losing. They don't like uncertainty. They don't like unexpected big bills. That's why you have insurance. It's the same deal.
I guess in that case where you've got fixed price, I mean, what's really key to that then is actually having the right sort of recording system. So what you've got in place is you've got the proper time recording system, so you can actually almost predict what kind of, like, if you've got a matter of a certain type, what's it likely to be. So you're pricing, yeah, you're going to win and lose on some of these, but you're actually
Yeah.
effectively knowing what your resource requirements are.
And of
And
course, the more you know about an area, the more you can understand the pricing structure, and also the better you become. So, in the area of, say, franchising contracts, we are
Mm,
extremely efficient because we have templates and things like that, and we can just plot this and this and this and this. We can do a franchise contract for a fraction of what it costs anybody else to do, and even changes and modifications because you understand what you're doing. And I think templates and so forth are very powerful. I know lawyers use more and more of them these days, but I think you can go further. I think advanced technology can be very helpful.
I totally agree. I mean, there's a company I'm actually on the board of, which called Smarter Drafter, and their whole business model is providing lawyers with templates so they can actually use, when they want to. So it's basically all sorts of like the latest precedents and templates and things they can actually use for themselves or actually make available to their clients. So there's some good drafting tools out there, and definitely good document automation tools out there to do that kind of thing with the precedents. But no, it's interesting. I mean, what do you think about the idea of? I mean, again, one of the other challenges I think in legal services as well is payment. I mean, as a consumer of legal services, I mean, the sorts of things, charging somebody a big whack up front in terms of, or charging people on progress bills. I mean, yeah, I mean, an innovation I'd like to see is where you're almost yeah, there's a way you can pay it by plan. So you've almost got like a plan you can pay on, or there's some sort of way of doing it like that, or you're even paying on a subscription basis for legal services.
Yeah, well, we have a system called PayPlan where you can do exactly that. We use it for things like fences and so forth. I don't know that
Yeah.
we've used it for legal services, but it's the same principle. What actually happens is I think you stick an extra about 8% on top of it, but then
Mm.
the customer gets a no interest loan. They can pay it off over the next 12 months or whatever.
Wow.
We use that quite widely.
I mean, I could say as a legal customer, that would just be so useful. I mean, knowing that you can
Yeah.
actually, and even actually, I think so. That's if you've got a matter you're dealing with, you shouldn't expect. But I also think there's room as well for in legal practice to actually offer subscription type service whereby people pay. If you're a business and you might be you pay $500 a month or $200 a month or whatever it is to each month, and you get access to some legal documents, you get access to some phone calls, you get access to maybe some HR type services. Those kinds of things would be absolutely totally valuable for the average sort of business.
Yeah, I think subscription is a good option. I don't think we're not doing that as yet, but I think it's a great idea. Look how it's worked for music or for
Mm,
access to video content. It's the
mm,
way of the future.
definitely.
It's a predictable cost. That's a very important issue when it comes to any kind of service.
It is, and I think you can actually you look at it. So, I mean, what is happening is you're seeing a lot of accounting practices adopt that model. So what they're doing is they've actually got a monthly direct debit sort of happening where they're taking the money out, they're producing the accounts. But I mean, I think what it does, it means that predictable for the business, and it means that if you do have something comes along the road, you need work on or advice on, you're not afraid to pick up the phone and talk to a lawyer, versus
Yeah,
being
that's right.
afraid of it.
It also means that as a service provider, you have an incentive to provide a cost-effective service because
Yeah,
because if you can give a person enough help so they don't need to call on you next time,
exactly.
then it's better for you because you cut down your costs. Whereas if you're charging by the
Mm.
hour, of course, your incentives can be very reversed.
Well, then you're actually in a position as well where you've got to be educated on actually how to talk to a lawyer and how to understand the sort of questions you ask and things you can talk about and the things you shouldn't talk about and where it goes. So I think that's actually all baked in. I mean, what do you see as innovations in the sort of services that, what innovations do you see that should be happening in the legal profession from point of view of provision of services?
basically what we've talked about. It's things like fixed prices would be great. Um, I think ongoing consultancy fees would be a brilliant way to go, but and just more and more use of precedences in IT. We make massive use of IT in gyms. We probably spend about $3 or $4 million a year in software development. We
Wow.
invest hugely in that area, and the bigger you are, the more you can choose to invest. But that is the best way for increasing productivity. Most lawyers actually tend to be not very astute in business, in my experience. They don't really have much of a very good sense of business principles, which is, of course, what we live and breathe all the time. So I think understanding how business works is an important thing. You can just simply, you always got to look at efficiency. How can you do things faster and better? It's no good just to say, I'm charging so much per hour. That's not going to get you anywhere. How can I get the client a great outcome at the least cost?
Yeah.
And
I
that
mean, what?
sometimes means that you don't take the job yourself. You give it to somebody else who knows better than you. Because you can have somebody, you can spend like several hours researching a problem, or you can
Mm,
find somebody who knows the answer and give it to you in 5 minutes like that.
yep.
That's the kind of person you want to be able to person. And sometimes running a proper legal practice means you've got to give work away. You've
Mm,
actually got to say, this is not an area I'm good at. Try Mary. She is great in this area. And any ethical lawyer should be doing that, saying, I'm not the best person. I'm very good at this, and I'm good at this, but I'm not good over there.
yeah. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, and yeah, you're absolutely right. That's the best way to actually operate. I mean, if you're not working in specialities, working on niches, and it just seems that what it sort of, from standing back and looking, I mean, it sort of seems the areas you've got specialty in are really that whole franchise or franchisee type business models where people are involved in that. And also as well, I guess in the consumer sort of consumer kind of stuff as well. So where, and I guess given the client base you've got, I mean, it sort of makes sense. There's people who are using, this service, this service, this service, might also this. I mean, it seems like gyms could be a bridge, like a bridge to legal services for people that wouldn't normally look at that or take those ones on.
No, I think so too. One of the things we'd like to get involved with is debt collection too. One thing that really
Mm.
upsets me is scumbag clients who don't pay.
Oh
Because
yeah, I know about
the
that.
service providers, we have very strong feelings about such things. So we'd like to work out really, really cost-effective way to make people pay the money they should pay, chase them like fury and all in that'll be a very interesting area for us. We've got new technology that's being developed, which hopefully do that very well.
No, excellent. I mean, on the technology side of things, I mean, you mentioned that. I guess what sort of innovations are you looking at from a technology standpoint, in delivering the services?
Well, it's just things like automated reminders and so forth, and templates and things, which is more
Mm,
and more of an everywhere you go and have a medical appointment, and they send you a reminder before it's due and stuff, and all the rest of it.
mm,
So those kinds of things. Look, technology is incredibly powerful. It's not been as strong in the services industry as it is been sort of things like manufacturing, but I think there's an awful lot of potential in just using good systems and develop them. We actually tend to develop our own systems in-house to a large extent because we find that nobody else has ones that really, really suit us. But we've, for example, seen the level of customer complaints go down to a fraction of what they used to be in the past, just by
mm,
using better technological systems. Um, and as we've done that, what we've found is the level of leads has risen dramatically. The cost of advertising portion to turnover is down. We used to actually not only have, we have in our EFIC contract, we have a certain amount put aside for advertising. We have to spend it on that. Now, in the past, we would usually put a lot in extra
mm,
to make
mm,
sure our franchises were busy. In recent years, we've had an issue. There's been so little need for advertising that we've gotten big surpluses. So, for example, all
mm.
my dog wash franchisees had a fully paid for conference just
Oh wow.
earlier this year, all paid for by advertising. That they made the decision. They said we said we've got extra money. We got close to $100,000. What do you want to do with it? What do you want this? This is, so we'd like a conference. So we said, okay, all paid for, accommodation,
Fantastic.
meals,
Oh, amazing.
transport, everything, because we got so much work, we don't need the advertising from you anymore.
Oh,
That's a
that's
good
fantastic.
situation to be in. And that's an example of how technology can have this dramatic effect.
No, definitely. I think actually AI is having that kind of effect in legal right now. I mean, some incredible innovations happening in the legal industry with AI. People, so I guess access to, means that effectively the professionals can access information from cases a lot easier. so they can consume and summarize and organize information a lot easier. It means that effectively the consumers can actually access things like chatbots and that kind of thing, and get access to information. And of course, so there's just been a lot of innovations in that area. I see all the time these firms that are being acquired, like technology firms being acquired because they've got these AI elements. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, we use a lot of that, mostly in areas like social media and so forth. It's very powerful. Some of the tools are extraordinary. I'm personally don't have great knowledge of it, but I've got staff members who are phenomenally good at it. Social media is another thing too that I think a lot of lawyers are not very familiar with. We have a very powerful social media section, very effective in terms of how you promote yourself to the public and how you convey the message across. It's actually incredibly cost-effective way of advertising.
Mm. Oh no, I totally agree. And I mean, you've definitely got that sort of presence out there. And I think you're also, I mean, you're also, Jim, you're very generous in terms of the amount of information you give away. Like you give a lot of business information away, you give a lot of information about your journey, about, the do's and don'ts. I mean, there's
Yeah.
just a fabulous bank of content that you produce out there and I guess, to help the larger community.
We have a training system, which I have to say it's a great training system, but the simplest measure you can possibly do that it's actually dropped our first year attrition rate by more than a third. And more than a third of people who were failing by better training, they're not failing in their first year or not leaving in the first year. But we give that away free. If you want to actually learn how to run a business or even a franchise network, you come to us. We don't sign people before they stop. We wait till after they've actually done the full course. So if a person wants to learn how to run a great business, they come to our training course. They can have it at cost, and they can go out and start their own business. We've actually had people come to us, learn all of our secrets, and go out and launch their own franchising systems.
Wow.
We learn
Gee.
we teach them as a franchisee, as a franchisor. We give them the full training. We give them the books. We give them the links. We say go and do it yourself. Now nobody's ever succeeded very well so far doing that, but it's just the attitude. And it's how I learned to sell lawn mowing grounds. Before I did a franchise, I used to build up and sell lawn mowing grounds, and I was really hopeless at selling. I absolutely have no people skills. I am blunt. I'm not good at selling, and I wasn't. I figured the only way to do it successfully, which worked brilliantly well, is I stopped worrying about my own business and started worrying about the person I was dealing with. If somebody come to see me, instead of concerned about how I can get more money out of them, I say, what's the best way to help you to get into business and be successful? Now, that might have mean advising them how to start their own business part-time. And I tell them how. I tell them all the advertising. I give them a brochure on how to do it. Or this is the best one to buy. And if people ask me for advice about buying from me or somebody else, I'd give them their best advice, which quite often was to buy from the other person, though they almost always bought from me anyway. The point of it is if you stop concerned about yourself and your own interests and you start thinking about the person you're dealing with, it actually is remarkably successful. That's actually the whole model of our franchising system too. We're a uniquely oriented towards success of franchisees. For example, our franchisees have the right to change franchisors. They can go to somebody else. They can vote out their own franchisor, and that's including myself, that I'm a franchisor. Wow. They can veto changes to their own manual. There's actually a clause in our franchise agreements that say that the majority share of Jim's group can never be sold to anybody without the written consent of the majority of franchisees. Now, I was told, financially speaking, that's a stupid thing to do because it devalues the company. But I am blowed if after I'm dead, which is probably going to be a long time away, another 20 years or so, somebody comes in and starts to buy out the business and rip off my franchisees. I won't have it. So you're always looking to the interest of the person that you're dealing with. That is the great secret.
Yeah. What inspires you, Jim? Like, where do you get your inspiration from?
To a large extent, it's my own people. When I get up in the morning, the fact that I am so dedicated to making my franchisees successful. Every single franchise, we've got 5,500 franchisees. Every single one of them has my direct phone number, direct email address. This isn't business hours only. They can ring me anytime. I had a franchisee ring me Christmas Day. I mean, only to wish me happy Christmas, but I take calls after hours, weekends. If I'm in church or something, then I'll wait till I get out and I'll ring them back. But I stay in contact all the time. After 1 month, it's automatic. I write my franchisees and say, how are you going? And I ask them about a thing called pay for work guarantee, which is they can do free work to make up their income. and build their business. And most of them write back to me, and most of the responses are great. They really are, and it's very warming. A great response makes my day. It makes me feel very good. But sometimes will be problems. They say, this has gone wrong, that's happened, that's gone wrong. Okay, let's do this, let's fix it, let's do something. Like, I'll give you an example. You've got a franchisee who's ready to start, had to hold a contract for 2 weeks, and then something's wrong with the contract. You have to change the contract. Now, according to the law, you've got to wait another 2 weeks. But here's a person who's quit their job, who's got no income. So I simply say, that's okay. Put them on the system, start giving them leads, give them work, and sign them in 2 weeks. Now, if they find in 2 weeks they're not happy with the system, then they walk away. That's fine, but it's very unlikely. But even so, I'm not having somebody without work for 2 weeks. Now, I can do that kind of thing easily all the time. And it's very rewarding. It really is. You've got to have a reason. I think one of the problems people have in business really is that they're so focused on money and success and wealth, they forget other things. There's a wonderful book I'm just reading by a guy called John Mackey, Home Food. What do you call it? He ran this huge health food chain in America. It's called Conscious Capitalism, and it just talks about how you've got to have a business that looks after everybody. It's not just the owners. The owners matter, and the people who fund it matter, but also your staff, your employees. In our case, obviously, franchisees, your suppliers. We got a great deal of trouble in business to actually look after our suppliers. So one of the things we do with insurance, for example, which is done through underwriters, is we really try hard to keep the claims down. So we put systems into place, and we do extra training, and we do this, and we actually get them to adjust things like the what do you call it, the write-off right of say a mower. They used to actually replace a 12-month-old mower for new price. Well, anybody just knows that's not fair. That's not reasonable. So we actually have a more reasonable rate. And we do things like that, so we keep the claims down. Now, that's the interest of the supplier, but also it's in our interest, because by keeping our claims down, we actually start getting better rates in the future, and we keep our insurance costs down. Mind you, we also have a situation, if the insurer is being unreasonable, we'll fight like fury to help our franchisees, because that's our job.
But it sounds like it's a more holistic approach to business, where you're actually looking at all the sort of stakeholders. So it's actually really looking at holistically at all the stakeholders that are actually, like, employees, customers, suppliers, all the folks that are actually doing business with, and looking after everyone's interests.
You look at business books like Good to Great, Built to Last by James Collins, which is they're decades old, but the lesson is very new. Great long-term businesses are ones that really care about everybody. Now, a good example of the opposite approach would be Jack Welch, who was, the end of the last century, he was the most admired business leader in America. But the things he did were really brutal. He paid himself obscene amounts of money while sacking tens of thousands of people. He got rid of experienced people to have other ones who was cheaper. He manipulated the financial results. He defunded research. He did a lot of really bad stuff that boosted his stock price and made him incredibly wealthy. But since he's gone, the whole thing has crumbled. Gee, is just a shadow of its former self. He did so much damage. Short-term boosting of the stock price, long-term. I know this is getting away from legal practice, but it's the same principle is applied.
It is.
If you're looking at business, and being in a law firm is having a business like any other, you've got to consider everybody. Don't go for the short-term profits. Always look for the long-term. Every day I make decisions that are against my personal direct financial self-interest. I do it all the time. Franchisee needs to leave, and I say, okay, we'll cut off your fees from the first of the month, so you don't have to pay anything for that. We do things like that, just as a goodwill gesture, because I want a person going away feeling happy. Now, I might have given away money, and this is little things, but you do it all the time. But in the end, it does pay, because people who are out there say, I've been dealt differently. Even though I left gyms, they looked after me. Well, they looked after me. Yeah, you should join. So you can't necessarily see the advantage, but you've always got to think long term.
It's interesting. I mean, the whole legal profession and models there. I mean, what you've got, I guess most of the legal practices are actually their partnerships, and you've got partners that are actually, they've got their piece of work they work in. There's shared costs. There's shared sort of service centers and resources put together. But effectively, some of them, for lack of better words, are actually like it's a bunch of smaller businesses inside one big business. Is that? What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts in terms of actually the traditional sort of structure of law firms like that?
I'm for it. I think it's a good idea. The only difference I would say is we don't want to take as much. It's in a
Mm,
sense what we're doing. I think just people can be a bit greedy. You've got to have a deal which is really good for the person you're dealing with, because it's actually the way to get the best people. If you offer
mm,
people a very genuinely good deal, you'll attract and you'll keep the best people. It's the same thing in franchising. Look, I could do a Johnny King and I could charge 15% and I make a whole lot more money. But let me give you an example, okay? A practical example. Mr. Antennas was a very successful antennas franchising organization. They had 50 franchisees, and they were
mm.
taking just a bit over half the turnover. One of them came across to us and started Jim's Antennas. Now, the antennas fees are higher on average than most divisions because of the advertising cost, but they average fees about 12%. So here's
Mm.
Mr. Antennas, 50%. We're charging effectively 12%. And bear in mind, we've got fairly big fixed costs, so that's not 12% profit. But what actually happened was that we basically butchered them. And it wasn't because of the clients, it was because who would want to go to somebody and pay 50% when they could come to us and pay 12%? So we
Right.
actually got the best people. And because we
Mm,
had the best people, we gave the best service and we had the
mm,
longest, the highest retention. And
mm.
basically, it just about drove them out of business, as far as I know. Now, funny thing is, the guy who started Mr. Antennas then went back and Jim's Antennas actually sold out at a massive profit, I might say, nearly $3 million. And then he went back and bought Mr. Antennas and a few other companies like that. So it's quite
Really.
ironic. But the whole principle was simple. We just simply it was a better system. Now we could make money out of it. Obviously, you don't sell a business for need $3 million if it's not actually profitable. But by being more generous and more reasonable with the people that we deal with, we actually managed to get a much better deal for ourselves in the long run.
Yeah, the long game versus short term sort of short term gains. Yeah.
We got like 200, we got 140 of them now, I think, Jim's Antennas.
So just in terms of legal practice, coming back that for a minute, I mean, if there's practitioners out there who've got sort of a specialty area and they're interested in potentially working with you, I mean, is that something you're open to? Are you open to
Yeah, of course,
take
we're
on
already doing it.
associates?
They
Okay,
can just
brilliant.
email legal@jims.net or jim@jims.net. We'll get through either way. One of the things we try very hard to do is to answer emails, which a lot of companies don't. It's one of the
Brilliant.
astonishing things, actually, David, is people, so many companies don't answer their emails. We had a
Mm,
uh like a couple of years back, we were linked to some consulting work. We're talking about six-figure consultancy. So I would recommend to 6 different companies to
mm,
actually inquire about it through their websites. One
mm.
of them got back 3 months later. The rest never replied.
Goodness. Oh, goodness
Some people
me.
don't even respond to their own emails. So when somebody has an idea for a new division or they want to join anything, they can email me and I'll always see it and I'll do something with it. If I'm not interested, I won't respond, of course, but I'll see it. And if it's got
Mm.
some value, I'll pass it on and we'll do something about it.
No,
That's
very
how new
interesting.
division starts. Someone just approaches me. So just being accessible is really important. I think one of the most important things anybody can do is answer their emails.
I
It
totally
doesn't take
agree.
long. I even
Yep.
check my spam filters. I will not, I will not just let it go to spam because most of the time it's garbage. But then
Mm,
it only takes me, maybe 30 seconds a day to get rid of the garbage. But once every week or two, it's one of my franchisees or someone I really need to hear from. And then I see
mm,
that.
mm. I mean, it's a great practice. It really is a great practice actually going back. There's so many people, as you say, so many people just don't even bother getting back to you. I mean, and there's a practice of ghosting as well. You see, where people, just give people a clear answer on whether it's something that's interest or not interest.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. It's valuable, and so you can be efficient too. You've got to be careful. Like I have a process that I go through where I start with the most recent email first,
Mm,
and I deal with it. You don't go back down the list and get the easy ones. You deal with it. What do I need to do about that? Okay, answer it, give it to somebody else. To next, 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 next. So I get well over 100 emails a day, but I deal with them all. I clear my email box every day, usually multiple times a day. I just go through stages where I do all the emails, and then I go and do something else like my writing or whatever it is.
you must work a lot of hours. I mean, God, that's a big process. I mean, with that and getting,
Well,
yeah,
not as much as you think, actually. I actually have
mhm,
a pretty good life. Yeah, it's a matter of being efficient.
yeah,
I'm not a workaholic. People often think I am, but I'm not. I just
mhm,
very, very efficient in what I do.
mhm,
I'll focus on it. I'll do it really ferociously.
yeah.
Like if I've got something to get through, I'll just do it.
Yep.
Somebody asks me to do something, I just do it. I sit down, I do it, I focus on that. Don't let myself distracted. Finish it off, send it off. Next.
Brilliant. No, really, yeah, a great tip. Jim, really appreciate your time today, and we'll put in some details about for the legal division if we've got if there's interested customers or if interested practices or lawyers that want to have a chat to you about those things. But really appreciate your time. It's always very inspiring and very motivational, and always learn a lot from talking with you. And thank you for being so generous with all the information you put out there on the internet about business in general. But thank you, really appreciate it.
Thanks, David. Good to talk to you.